Hey everybody, this is Dax, you are you, and haven't we all wanted to be Stargirl, so to speak, at one point in our lives, maybe now in our lives? Somebody who is, let me just spout off the adjectives: benevolent, has gravity, sweetness, seriousness, joy, effervescence, mystery, is enchanting, vulnerable, fair, sincere, frank, calm, and never angry at the world. That is Stargirl. I'm going to do a long review, as you've probably already seen from the minutes on this, of Stargirl the movie with Grace Vanderwaal and Graham Vershaer. And I have actually dreaded doing this a little bit because this is a movie for the ages. This is an enchanting, extraordinary movie. I've already watched it 3 times. I've watched one of her speech 6 times now. This is exquisitely written, exquisitely acted, produced, cinematography. The acting is just off the charts by all of the actors in this. And Grace Vanderwaal especially, I have to say, maybe a little bit better than everybody else, which just blew me away. I was a little bit worried going into this that her newness to acting would be, a little bit of a hindrance, and you could see that. Not at all. And I'll get into that here in a little while. This review is going to have major spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie, you may not want to watch this. This is not just a review. I'm going through this movie. I liked it that much. And I plan on starting my own movie channel, YouTube channel, eventually. I'll probably never do this, where I go through almost the entire movie with clips. The clips I have in this are ones that I took with my phone while watching the movie. They should be high quality. I think they're high quality, so pardon me on that. But this movie is not like your other coming-of-age movies like Heathers or Mean Girls or even 16 Candles or Breakfast Club or hundreds of other coming-of-age teenage movies. This movie is magical. And in fact, we're not supposed to be sure whether Grace is a figment of Leo's imagination or if she was real. But as the middle-aged friend, soothsayer of Leo in the movie, Giancarlo Esposito, the actor, says, well, we don't really know much about dinosaurs, and it's really hard to put your mind around that. They almost seem magical and yet real. And isn't that what life is supposed to be about, both the real and the magic? And I think that's the way we're supposed to take Grace in this. And I do. And I don't care. I mean, she was real. She is real. She is the almost bomb that comes into a high school and is herself. Always, except for just a short bit in the movie. And I really love how they did that. And I'll get into that here in a minute as well. But what is this movie about? Well, I was going to say what it's about until I saw this, and I will anyway, but until I saw this 1.5 minute clip of the actors and writers of the movie talking about what it's about. So why don't we watch that real quick? It's 1.5 minutes. Let's watch that.
Stargirl follows 2 young teenagers who end up falling in love in high school and go through this really difficult and interesting time in their relationship where one is more expressive and one's more of an introvert.
Mom, were you ever afraid of what people thought of you?
Figuring out who we are is the one thing no one else can do for us.
We're in such an age where conforming is so heavy. I think probably the heaviest it's been in a really, really, really long time. So I think this is definitely perfect timing for a movie like this to come out.
She's all about waking up in the morning and deciding not so much what everybody else is going to wear or what everybody else is going to think or say, but what she's going to think and say. And suddenly you have a school full of individuals instead of clones.
She is brave to just be who she wants to be and show up, even though she's in a room where everyone else just wants to follow the status quo. And I hope they can take a little bit of that back to wherever they're from.
There's just something about her. She's not like anyone else. Is she magic?
I think it's a movie for young people, for the next generation, but I also think their parents will feel a bit of nostalgia for it too.
We need stories like this. We need inspiration, not ones that are just soupy and sappy, but ones that really exemplify what life is really like.
I think it's most important to learn from this movie that making other people happy will never make you happy. You have to be in touch with yourself, and your happiness and security has to always stay within.
Making other people happy will not make you happy. I mean, who says it best but Grace Vanderwaal herself? I love how serious all of these people took in when they described this movie. How often do you see that where the actors are actually serious about the movie? And this is almost sort of a magical, enchanting movie with a very serious message. And that is, be yourself always. And this movie gets that across, I think, really better than any movie I've ever seen. It doesn't show the nitty-gritty aspect of high school like a lot of teenage movies like Mean Girls and Heathers and, Breakfast Club and a few others. It doesn't have that mean character or whatever, and you have to learn to get past the mean character. This movie assumes that we already know what it's all about. It doesn't gloss over it. It just makes it to where the central figure is what this movie is about. The central figure being Stargirl, Grace, and how she is always herself. And just a brief time in the movie where she decides that she wants to please Leo enough to where she'll go back to being her birth name, Susan, she realizes that that's not going to work. And I love how they did that. Wow. Why don't we... Well, before we get to that, I'm going to get to that here in a little bit, but before we get to that, I want to do a little bit of a progression. I love how they do it. They've got Leo, the main boy character, who does want to fit in. He was bullied when he was younger, and so he just decides, I'm going to fit in, I'm not going to be anybody. So he doesn't wear his dad's tie to school, he conforms, and is unhappy and doesn't know who he is. And of course, as we know, he has to end up asking his mom later. He has to ask her, Mom, were you ever afraid of what people thought of you? And she says, figuring out who you are is the one thing nobody can do for you. But of course, Stargirl knows who she is. And I mean, it's just, and she doesn't put it in anybody's face because she knows so well who she is. She's never angry at anybody. She has nothing to prove. She doesn't want to upset anybody. She's an extraordinarily giving personality. And this whole sort of magical thread in the movie is sort of enthralling, I think. Even when Leo sees her, he's out doing band practice, he sees her for the first time across the street in this image here from the movie. She's there, and then, she's gone when he looks back around, or, she's gone, right? I mean, it's just like a 1-second clip from the movie. But then she enters the class.
Tries to put me down.
I just love how Grace, that look on Grace's face, I mean, she is the perfect person in the world to do this movie. This is her personality. I know several people have already said that it was like Grace was born for this movie. She was born for this movie. She is effervescence, benign, benevolent personality, a giving, thoroughly giving personality, firm, creative, splendid in just her animation of her soul. And that's who Stargirl is, and the way she dresses and being herself, including in the third time that Leo sees her in this clip where she sings happy birthday to him in the lunchroom, just comes up to him in the lunchroom. How many people would do that? Nobody would do this. Let's watch this.
Let's put the new girl on hot seat.
Why?
She'd be the perfect guest.
What's her name anyway?
Stargirl. My name is Stargirl.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Leo. Happy birthday to you.
Great job, that's amazing.
How'd she know your name?
How does she know it's her birthday?
That's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And how about that look on Grace's face? Where that close-up of the camera, I mean, is that not sweetness? I mean, it's just utterly... If I were a boy and a girl came up to me and sang that on the ukulele right there in the middle of the cafeteria, I probably would have blushed. I would have blushed. But it's this movie goes right to your soul. It just continually goes right to your soul. I had tears in my eyes at least a half a dozen times in this movie, out of its sweetness and how poignant it is many times. So when it comes down to the sweetness, it's I'd like to have just a couple of clips. I'm sorry, this is going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bit difficult to do this because I've got so many clips. But anyway, so you've got she's at the. I'm going to kind of skip around the movie a little bit and show just how sweet Grace is with Leo. So you've got the moment where they're at the dance later, and she just says, Leo can't find words like a lot of boys his age can't. So she just doesn't, she just goes ahead and just interrupts him and says thank you when he's about to compliment her at the dance. So here that is.
You look
Thanks. Yeah.
You're welcome, Stargirl.
You ready for your surprise?
I have no idea.
That's just sweet. And then she does that. She did that in the beginning of the movie where she had just done the song in the field and inspired everybody. And he can't get the words out of his mouth. So she goes ahead and interrupts in her sweet way. And here's that clip.
That was... that was...
Thanks, Leo.
It's just gorgeous. I mean, just how sweet she is with him, with everybody. And then you got the time where she is, I'm talking about her sweetness, the sweetness of her character, and the time where she decides that she's going to go ahead and be Susan for him so that he's not uncomfortable. And he sees her. This is an extraordinary scene. I mean, how how stunning, surprising is it that it's her texting him, and she's sitting across the way with a new haircut, not her flowery costume on, and she walks over, and how vulnerable she is in this, and what she must be going through to try to make him happy, not make herself happy. As she said in that interview, you can't make other people can't make you happy. You can only make yourself happy. But she does this in this scene.
Do you still want to go with me later?
To Tucson?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I do. Susan.
That's extraordinary. It's extraordinary how vulnerable she is. And you could tell she's not real happy. And her acting, by the way, this is just one of the many parts in this movie where her acting just reaches down and grabs you. I mean, extraordinary acting on her part. And then I like also her acting in the part where she's won the right to go to the regional competition on giving a speech. And he's talking with her. She wants him to go with her. And then he says this, and he asks her, well, don't you want to go? Don't you want your mom to go? I think it is, or something like that. And listen to what she says.
Mr. Abenow told me that I get to take a guest to Tucson. Do you want to come with me?
What about your mom?
I'd rather go with you, Leo.
No, I'd rather go with you, Leo. And just the way she says it, I'd rather go with you, Leo. It's just so matter of fact. Part of this is great directing. I don't know if Grace spontaneously just is matter of fact like that, like she is in her interviews. But this could be also great directing by Julia Hart, saying just be yourself, just be natural about how you respond. But in so many movies and so many teen movies, the girl would say, "I'd rather go with you," but not Grace, not Stargirl. Stargirl says, "I'd rather go with you, Leo." It just hits you when the way she says it. And every aspect of this movie is that subtle. It's not thrown at you in this movie. And I love another aspect of Grace's personality is just her joie de vivre, her absolute joy that comes out really especially in the dancing and when she's dancing. And there's two real big dancing moments in this. One is when she gets Leo to sing, and how fantastic was that? Her surprise for him, even though they're sort of on the outs, is that she has set it up where his dad's favorite song that he used to sing in the car with his dad, Just What I Needed by the Cars, which is one of my favorite songs of all time as well. So that was really nice. She set it up to where the band is going to play the song, and Leo is going to sing it. He doesn't know that, and that's an extraordinary scene. And so he does a great job singing. I mean, his voice is pretty good. He has a lot of fun. The people in the crowd recognize this. Exquisite scene. Just so, my heart just jumped out of my chest on this scene. But at the end, or while he's singing, about halfway through the song, Grace comes through the crowd and begins dancing. Extraordinary joyful dancing. And so here's that scene right there. Here it is. That's just, oh my God. And then when she's going out of, the dance hall there, everybody ends up joining her, and he jumps off the stage and joins her. And then they end up going outside in a big line. And of course, Grace wasn't expecting everybody to do that. Grace just, her joy takes her outside. I think she's probably letting him have his moment. Everybody ends up following her. They go outside the building in a big line dance almost. And then, of course, Leo joins. And then the music, they improvise on the music so that you can hear it. I thought that was really clever the way they did that. But then he finds her again, and then watch this scene where she turns around. She's got her back to the camera, but she turns around with just this extraordinary vulnerability on her face. But then she begins dancing. And it's almost a fairy dream dance the way she dances. It's Grace Vanderwaal. So here it is. I mean, that's just amazing. I mean, it's infectious. The way her personality is infectious, and it infects the school, as Esposito has said, that. And then the writer said, I hope the kids go away from this and they decide to be themselves. They decide to be like this. And of course, Stargirl isn't expecting everybody to be like her. She's just being Stargirl. And it's just lovely the way she is. And soon after that scene, of course, Stargirl has one of her serious moments where she has to apologize to the girl whose brother got injured on a bicycle, and Grace did what she thought was an extraordinarily charitable act of going to get the bike out of a store, a pawn shop, out of a pawn shop, took it back to the family so the kid could have his bike back. The younger brother of this girl could have the bike back. But then Grace didn't know that he was so injured so badly that he could never ride a bike again. And where she finds that out in the interview is extraordinary as well, with Grace crying and that girl really, being mean. It's the one time in this movie, one of the few times in this movie where somebody's actually not being charitable. But Grace doesn't jump back at her, because Grace was innocent of what she had done. But after this dance scene, Grace goes up to the girl who was the only one who didn't go outside, and Grace does an exquisite apology and just says, truly, I'm sorry. And then when the girl will not acknowledge the apology, Grace, I don't have a clip of that, but Grace just kind of, nods her head as if she understands that the girl isn't ready to accept the apology. Grace goes off, and then when Leo goes outside to find Grace, Grace is gone, and that's the last time we see Grace in the movie. That's the one thing about this movie I don't like, is the fact that we don't get to see Grace again. We don't get a goodbye. She doesn't tell Leo where she's going, and this sort of adds to sort of the magical aspect of this movie. Did Grace, was Stargirl real? Because he goes over and he says maybe she and her mom moved off. The mom had, business to do or whatever. But that's the only part of this movie that, to me, is a little bit depressing, because I wanted to see some sort of resolution with Leo and Grace. But that's not what the movie's about. I get that. But I really wanted to see Stargirl and Leo together again. But getting back to Grace's personality in this movie and how this movie has such exquisite depth to it, and her character has such exquisite depth to it, is Stargirl isn't just this little fairy going around doing her happy little thing. She's actually got great depth. She listens to people. She watches people. And when it comes right down to it, every time except for once in this movie, she is herself, and she will say what's on her mind. And there are 3 particular scenes where she does this, where her acting, she and Leo's acting is as good really as Grace's in this movie. Leo's a great actor. He evidently has been acting for quite a while. Graham Vershare has been acting for quite a while. But there's the scene where after she helped the football player, which I thought was an extraordinary scene. She helped that football player on the field. She goes out because her emotions, her empathy is too much to handle. She has to go out and help the injured player of the opposing team. And the camera work on that is extraordinary. Going back to everybody, especially Leo in the stands, and they're all like, what is she doing? That's the opposing quarterback who's beating us, but not Grace. Not Stargirl. Stargirl goes out there, and this is what Grace would do, and I think this is one reason why I said Grace. But Stargirl goes out there and holds his hand, and says later that explains that the reason she held his hand is because he kept holding her hand. He needed the comfort, and Stargirl was there for the comfort and for somebody who's hurt, and she couldn't understand how the fans would at first clap and then just stay silent. Her soul is too pure for that. She has a pure, unadulteratedly pure, exquisite, benevolent, empathetic soul. And frankly, I think that's Grace Vanderwaal in real life, and that's one reason why this movie is perfect. It's a perfect vehicle. It's a perfect role for Grace. I hope to see her in other movies, but I can't imagine another movie where the role is her. So anyway, after that whole thing happens, she goes off in the ambulance with the injured football player. Then the next scene is Leo is waiting at her house, and he says, I waited here to make sure you were okay. And then this happens.
I want to make sure you got home okay.
Thank you.
We lost, in case you were wondering.
Kovac's gonna be okay, in case you were wondering.
After you left, the whole team kind of just fell apart. You're our good luck charm.
How about that? I mean, he says, you know, we lost in case you're wondering. And she just hesitates for a second, looks at him, not angry, because Stargirl doesn't really get angry. She just says, he'll be all right in case you were wondering. Man, boy, that hit me like a ton of bricks, the way she did that. Repeating his phrase back to him. Wow. I mean, it's perfect. It's perfect writing, and it's perfect acting by she and Leo. Her acting on that is just extraordinary. It's not over the top. It's good directing. And boy, that's a poignant scene. And it just shows the difference between her and Leo, where their emphasis is in life. You know, his is about winning and about how you look to other people. And hers is about caring about another human being who was hurt. Boy, extraordinary scene. Another scene is this scene where he is and he's talking about winning. I'm trying to remember the clip completely. He's talking about winning, but she says, people aren't happy because they win because they're happy. Let's watch this scene. This is where she's temporarily Susan. So here we go.
I guess I thought maybe some of them would be happy you won.
People aren't happy because they win. They win because they're happy.
Susan,
Were you even listening?
to what?
My speech.
Of course.
That was Stargirl. I'm Stargirl. Susan didn't win that trophy. I did.
But you were talking about balance.
I know that you think that this would make it easier. But I can't just be somebody else.
But you're Susan. You are. That's your name.
You're off the hook for the dance, by the way. You can't go with someone who doesn't exist.
Again, Grace's acting is so phenomenal here. And I like how she says, she doesn't say, oh, and by the way, we're not going to go to the dance together. She just says, by the way, you're off the hook for the dance. So no, again, no anger. She's not a vindictive soul. It's not in her. She can't be. She's too much herself. She will go on, no matter what, as Stargirl. So another scene was where he is saying, why can't you be like everyone else? And this is right before she does actually decide to be Susan for a while. And of course we don't know that as the audience. But the way, again, her acting, this is another example of her acting. Her acting in this is exquisite. And she's a little bit angry in this, but only in the right way and not vindictive. So let's watch that clip.
What do you mean?
You could just hang out. Like when it's just us.
So you can go back to blending in.
This isn't about me.
It's not?
You were the one that said you wanted to make friends.
I do.
Then listen to them. Why can't you just be more like everybody else?
Is that what you want?
I don't know. But I think you'd be happy. I think we could be happy. Stargirl. Stargirl, come on, I'll drive you home.
I'd rather walk.
Just amazing the way she does that, and walking off and not being mad. It's just another extraordinary clip. But the best acting, especially the most prolonged acting bit in this, is one that, frankly, I'm not sure I've ever seen in a teenage movie where Grace has 3 minutes on screen. 3 full minutes. It's her speech that she is supposed to give as Susan because she's compromised and wants to make him happy. She's doing it in front of the crowd at the regional speech contest, forensic speech contest. And she is dressed, her hairdo is like Susan, she's dressed as Susan, and she's supposed to do the speech on the everything in modern society is instantaneous gratification. You have to know what you think right away. You could be interrupted at any moment. And you have to respond when you get interrupted. So that was what her speech, the conforming speech, was going to be. And she's already written it. She's about to deliver it. She begins delivering it. And then just a few seconds in, the speech itself, ironically, this is exquisitely done. Cinematography, writing, directing. Just a few minutes into her speech, a phone goes off in the audience. A middle-aged gentleman nervously tries to turn the phone off, and Grace just stops and looks out at the audience. And we get several images of people in the audience looking at her, and she's just calm, and she's looking out at everybody. Then she moves away from the lectern, takes off her shoes, just starts looking at everybody again. And I'm going to do actually the full 3-minute speech right here because it is extraordinary. There's only 3 takeaways, 3 move-aways of the camera from her, 3 very brief ones on this 3-minute speech. It looks to me like she gave the entire 3-minute speech without interruption. And the acting is just off the charts. Amazing, poignant. Her little mannerisms in the acting, everything on this. I mean, I don't know how Grace Vanderwaal, never having acted before, did this. And I think what's interesting, if you'll notice in this 3-minute speech, about a minute into the speech, the man whose phone went off, it shows a brief image of him completely enthralled by Grace deciding to do her speech as Stargirl instead of doing her speech as Grace. So let me put my headphones on and we'll watch this one together. 3 minutes. So here we go.
I don't know why I was giving that speech. I don't know why I do a lot of things lately. I bet you find that too, right? And it's because we don't think. We just do. We don't take a step back and process. Everything's so instant these days. How can we? Dinner in minutes, 1,000 photographs in one burst. You have to like something this second. You have to know how you feel about everything. You can't be unsure or confused or change your mind. There's no time to figure out who you are. You have to know right now. Have you ever seen a flower grow? I mean, of course not. It's nearly impossible to wait for anything that takes that long. But if you did, it would change you. It would slow you down. It would remind you that real things take time. It's magic too, isn't it? I mean, so are 1,000 photographs in one burst, but a flower. You plant a seed in the ground and a whole world develops and stretches out and opens up. It's easy to get confused when we're moving so fast and to think we're doing the right thing when really we're not. But if we're lucky, we could find a balance. We could take a step back. We could take a breath. The next time that you see a flower sticking up out of the ground or in a vase, just remember that part of what makes it beautiful is how long it took to grow.
I wasn't thinking I was going to tear up again. I've watched that 6 or 7 times now, just that 3-minute clip. How extraordinary. Not just Grace's performance, but the writing on that. If that doesn't make a person reflect on our modern society and how we have to disconnect and think about life in the long term and about our own selves and our growth as flowers. That's an extraordinary speech, and Grace's delivery on that. I don't think that there's ever been, in my recollection, a teenager give that extraordinary a speech in a coming-of-age movie. There haven't been too many great speeches like that ever in my book. It's moving. It's soul-moving. It's so good. And Grace, I mean, frankly, I would like to see her get some sort of award recognition on an adult level, not just kid movies, on an adult level for her acting in this. And maybe Graham also. Graham does an exquisite job. On the couch with his mom, when he has that part about, were you ever afraid of what people thought of you? And his mom is so sweet. She's a great mom. I love how they do it in the movie where she is, she's starting to see that he's interested in girls, and her whole reaction there when she says, "What's her name?" And he's like, "Oh, you know, it's not about that. It's her name." And she says, "What?" And he goes, "Stargirl." And the mom goes, "Stargirl? Really? Stargirl?" And I think he actually says the SH word going into his room on that, which I caught the second time I watched it. I think he says that. But anyway, that's a great scene. This movie is filled with great scenes. The soothsayer, Giancarlo Esposito, who talks about the dinosaurs. He's a great guy. He takes him into the woodhouse where Grace's office is. What a great thing to call it. It's her office. It's where she does the work of life. Another extraordinary, and I guess that's the original writers, Spinelli's writing that they took. That's extraordinary scene, great idea, exquisite writing on that as well. So I think that was it as far as the scenes that I wanted to show you. Yeah, I believe that's it on the scenes. Okay, so anyway, I know this is getting really long, but I really wanted to get into this, and I just want to wrap up by saying that this is a movie I'll watch dozens of times. I'm sure my daughter and I will watch it dozens of times. She was blown away by the movie as well. Grace's acting, Graham's acting on this, everybody's acting on this. But this is a different kind of coming of age movie. It's a coming of individualism movie. It's a coming of be yourself always movie. And it also has a message about how once a person is his or herself, they no longer want to lash out at the world. It's simply a matter of living in the world, and the world becomes a magical place. They did this with Grace in this. I think it is perfectly done. And at the very beginning, in the first 20 minutes, I was a little bit worried that it didn't have enough nitty-gritty in it. You know, the angry kids, even upset that Grace was grabbing the limelight. And, you know, the pretty girl clique asking her to join them, and she doesn't, you know, and we're supposed to get the repercussions from that. At first, I'm like, well, I'd kind of like to see how Stargirl handles that. But then as the movie went on, I was glad that they just stayed focused on the relationship between Grace and Leo. There's the extraordinary scenes of where Grace is, we're seeing Grace's benevolence, like with the bike, and she's the one who gives him the ties secretly for his birthday. She does, in secret, she does the bike, helping the football player, teaching Leo that it's good sometimes to just scream, go out, let the world know that you're there, who you are. Exquisite. That's exquisite. And I love the whole metaphor in this movie. I was going to wrap up, but there were a few things I wanted to say. I love the metaphor in this movie of the mud frog. As I think it was Leo explaining in voice and overwrite that, not voiceover. Thank you, Dax. That the mud frog is known for, hiding, being buried in the sand until the rains come and invigorate and bring the mud frog to life. Well, of course, obviously, Grace is the rain that brings the mud frogs, the high school, to life. And I love that scene also, again, where they're out there on that rock, and she says, close your eyes. She's always telling him what to do in a very nice way. And he just does, take your shoes off, close your eyes. I love how she does it in such a nice, sweet way. But she's in charge. It's another example of how Grace is in charge. Stargirl is in charge of her life and knows how to direct people in the right way to do the things that are going to be happy. And I like also the way they bring around the enchanted aspect. When I was trying to think of an adjective to describe this movie, enchanting was the one that came to mind. And I didn't remember that in the movie, enchanted is actually used by Grace when she says, I wish that we had designated enchanted spaces like they have in Iceland. And so that's where they're at on the rock, is the enchanted place. She says in Iceland they have officially designated enchanted places. I think the government or interior industry, interior department of the Interior should designate enchanted places. Well, Grace is an enchanted place. The world is an enchanted place for Stargirl. Sorry, I said Grace again. So this movie is enchanting. And it's interesting also that the word enchant comes from the Latin cantare, to sing. And then in medieval times in England, enchantment was actually a magical spell. And now it just means sort of charming. So you go from singing to magical spell to charming, all in the word enchantment. And that describes this movie. It's about singing, because singing is the joyfulness of life. It's one of those joys of life, and the magical spell this movie has. It's that magic this movie has, and it is charming, utterly, absolutely charming. Grace Vanderwaal is utterly, absolutely charming. This is a movie I will watch for the rest of my life, and especially when I just want to feel magical and enjoy the journey with Stargirl, with Grace and Graham on this wonderful pixie dust journey of an hour and 45 minutes. One of the things I forgot to mention was that this is not a musical movie, like a musical per se, but it's got some great songs in it and some great singing in it. Leo and Stargirl do a great rendition of 13 by Big Star, which I'd never heard before, and I've now downloaded. I really like that song. The songs that Grace sang during the marching band type stuff were basic, those were basic songs. Of course, Grace does a great job with them and is charismatic. But the two songs to look for are in the rolling credits at the end. One of them is Grace singing Give Me Love by George Harrison, an exquisite, just impacting version that she gives on that I like as much or possibly more than the original. And I didn't think that was possible, excuse me. And then, of course, Grace singing Today and Tomorrow, which each time I hear it, I fall in love with it even more. So, and that's the very last song in the rolling credits. And then at the very end, as she's finishing off the song, it shows her and Leo in chairs, and she's got her ukulele and is singing to him. And it's a great, touching end on this movie. So I just wanted to mention that as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what all of y'all say about this movie. I apologize that it's so long. I don't apologize. I'm glad it's so long. This movie deserves this. So I look forward to hearing from all of y'all. And how did you like that glitter on Grace's eyes during that interview? During the interview. Man, and that haircut. That girl's growing up. She's exotic. And she's going to get even more exotic. And I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, let me know what you think about the movie, about everything. So in the meantime, I'll catch you on the backside. Take care of yourselves now. Bye.